So today is actually a continuation of our previous discussion. So I hope you had the chance to join us 2 weeks ago or watch the recording that was released. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about data integrations. We talked about building the adapters that pull the information into Corbett. So previously, we were in this section, data integrations, or if you're in our mega menu style systems, it would be in the advanced section of the mega menu right at the top, also called integrations. And then you have the adapters that are actually pulling the information in. And that's where we stopped in our last class. Today, we're going to carry forward and talk about how this integrated information, how you take something like a data table of employee call statistics or something like an RSS feed from the New York Times, which is just feeding story information and links into the system. How do you then visualize this in Corbett? That's what we're going to talk through today. So that's today's topic. We're also topics upcoming in November. We have a couple newer features we're going to review. We're going to talk through branding controls for Signage, which is a fairly new release. And we are going to talk about the Launchpad approval option, which recently was added as a capability to be able to be turned on in the system. So those are our upcoming topics. So today's topic, data visualization. This happens from your subscribed data, your data integrations. The visualization of this information is built in layouts. So we're going to go into the content section, either of the enhanced sidebar UI, which we can turn on if you're seeing this and interested in having it in your system, just let us know. Or if you're in the mega menu style system, it's still in the content section. And then the layouts section. So we're going to build a new layout design here together that's referencing and pulling in the data. So I'm going to create a new layout. I'm just going to go with the standard dynamic design. I'm going to call it call data. So when you're in the builder tool, how you link this design to a data table is in the subscriptions section of the control panel. So with subscriptions expanded here, I can click configure, and it will open up this GUI interface for me to create the SQL code that will tell this design where to look for information and how often to pull that information into this design. So this subscription needs a name, and this really is just a name for you when referencing this bit of code. It doesn't actually have a dedicated function in the code, but it should be clear. So I'll call it call data. It asks about how often, let me zoom my control panel in here. The pull rate, that is how often should the layout, when it is playing, how often should it reach back to its source of information? It starts at 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes, which is a decent time frame for something like a news ticker or a news item that, they're updating. You want real-time updates, but it doesn't have to be real time down to under a minute timings. So this is call data, though. This is something we do want to see more real time than every 5-minute updating. So I'm going to actually just take a 0 off that and cut it down to 30 seconds. 30 seconds is the most often you can have a layout design checking and refreshing and looking for updates to its information without some other enhancements added to your service. So we'll leave it at the fastest it can be in my system, which is 30 seconds. We tell it which data table we want to look at. So these are the data tables that are built in my system. This is what they've been named. I'm going to look at the center data table. It asks me how I would like to organize this information as I retrieve it. So just like having data filters in Excel, which column do I want to evaluate this table on? I'm going to do it just agent last name for sake here. And then do I want to sort this table ascending or descending based on that criteria? I'll leave it ascending. Now, this subscription does have limits. The standard limit is 30 rows of information. So when this reaches out to the table, it doesn't pull all of the information at once. It pulls 30 rows at a time at max. Generally, this is okay because you don't really have ability to display that many rows on a screen at a single time. But if you have a situation, we've had clients that have, they're showing competition statistics for a sporting event, and they have over 100 participants in that sporting event. How you configure that type of subscription is that you actually go to the paging. So you actually configure a paging system that pulls however many rows you're going to display at one time, like 10 or 15 rows of data on the screen. How long do you want that group of 15 to be on the screen? So we could go like 15 seconds, make it 15 rows, 15 seconds per group. And then I would actually drop that down to 0 limit, meaning it will go through all the rows. So that is the paging behavior you would put in place if you actually had over 30 rows of information that you needed to display. That would be unusual, but possible. Now, I need to tell this subscription, it's going to that data table. That data table has all of these different available columns. And easiest is just saying, you know what, I would like to subscribe to all of them. Sometimes, though, these tables have hundreds of columns, and to actively subscribe to them is going to increase kind of operational overhead on the device showing this. So if you actually only need, 4 columns that you're displaying, you can just select those. And then when this design runs and it looks back to its source, it'll actually only return the selected columns. Those, again, kind of fringe situations. The easiest is just select all. Generally, that is the easiest. And now I can hit Save Subscription. And this is what a subscription section in a builder looks like when it has already been set up with a data subscription, looking to a data table for information. And then if I want to visualize this data, all I need to do is actually drag a piece of information to my canvas, just like dragging in an element. Like if I want to put a background to this, the easiest thing to do is just add an element with a white background. So just like adding that element to the canvas, adding data works the same. Which data point do I want to add? In this case, I'll start with the entire subscription. And now I have a data table displaying a section of the information. It doesn't start showing all the rows, but it does start showing all the columns because I dragged in the entire subscription. Maybe I just want to see one data point, like the abandon rate for a call center. I can just drag that in, and it gives me the header and the first data point for that piece of information. So this is just how you get the data on the screen. I want to talk a little bit more about the subscriptions here. So when you're working with the subscriptions, if you need to check the configuration, you can always click Configure again, and it opens up those instructions. If you are someone who is knowledgeable in SQL, and you understand all the things that SQL can actually do for you, you can go directly to the SQL editor for this subscription and make changes to it directly in the SQL code. That's perfectly fine. You can validate it and you can hit save. Just know if you hit save, these fields will gray out for you in the GUI experience because you have now engaged kind of the full SQL editor. Another one of the GUI pieces here that you can do with the GUI, the graphic user interface, or directly through the SQL is actually filter your results. Maybe I don't want all the different skills to be displayed all at once. Maybe this board, this screen that I'm building, is only for one of those groups. You can filter down what is being shown through the subscription by building a filter here inside of that subscription using the GUI or using the SQL code. So I can add a filter, for example, if the skill name for the column of information, I want to find ones that contain sales. So I want to find like inbound sales, outbound sales. I don't want to find support. I can then save that filter, update my subscription, and you can see I've messed something up because the name sales isn't actually contained in there. So that is what it looks like when you don't actually have a properly defined filter because you messed up one of the terms by actively typing it in. I think it's sale. Nope. This is what happens when I don't do a good enough deep dive into my own data before I dive into teaching a class. It is sales. It's because there's no space. That's why it's not recognizing the contains. Failing my own logic. I will say more common than typing in your filter is tying this filter to the actual player that's displaying it. That gives you the ability to build one visualization and then actually let the system filter what it is for. That is the way that door displays for meeting event information gets built. There is one design for door displays, and then you actually filter based off any of these criteria looking to the media player's metadata that is displaying it. So again, this goes back to one of our previous classes as well. Media players have these data fields where you can give them information about themselves. So for example, if I had each of my player knew the actual name of its department and it matched a skill name that I wanted to filter as, I can have this display filter based on where it's being shown. So a lot of that automation. I'm just going to leave my data being displayed here. Now, again, you can write those types of filters straight in the SQL editor as well if you're knowledgeable about SQL. So once the data is on the screen, it is incredibly likely you're going to need to format it and format how you want it to look. So that is done like any other element on the canvas. These data elements have a corner where you can click and drag, lower right-hand corner. And the upper right-hand corner has a gear element where you can go to edit the element. When you open up the editing ribbon for a data element, it is going to be one of the more complex elements that you edit because it actually has these 3 different sections or tabs for different types of controls that you toggle through. So the first one is actually text styling. So it shows you things like the font, the size, the color, the alignment, the text wrap inside of that. The middle one is the data. That's where you can set the number of rows that you want on the screen. Which columns do you want on the screen? And format masking and other additional filtering. So if a piece of information is being fed into the system, being displayed just as a raw time value, it is through masking, format masking, where you turn that into like a durational value, or you turn a website into a QR code that people can scan. And the last section is table. So this is where you go to actually adjust the table, like column widths. Do you want to show the headers or not? Background colors, cell line colors. So just know that there's a few different pieces depending on what you're looking to edit. So I'm going to start by going to my data section. And I'm actually going to decrease that by a couple rows just to simplify what we're seeing. I can then go to the columns. Because this started as dragging the entire subscription in, it is showing every one of my available columns. I don't have to show those. So if I just want, agent last name, the skill name that they're in, the state that they're in, and their time in that state, I can simplify down my display of data to just those items. These headers you can directly edit if you're displaying them. So I can say agent last name. I'm changing the way it's displayed. I'm not changing the data and I'm not breaking the data. But I'm just changing the way it shows. Now, because this element has a cursor and lets you directly type into it, it is one of those elements that doesn't let you move it around on the canvas or change and click and drag the size while you have the edit ribbon open, just like a text container. You can't move it around while you're editing it. So I'd have to do save as, and now I can move it around. Even items brought in as a single data point, when you go to edit them, they look the same. And then you can add more rows or columns to the display, taking it from like one single data point to multiple data points. You can even decide you just want to see the data, the number, and maybe you want to do some different stylized text off to the side to explain what that number is or means. You don't have to display the actual header row. So that's how you get data onto a display in short. Now, it can be things like a display of real-time statistics. It can be an event panel where you see different data fields positioned and stylized differently, like the group name, the start time, the end time, the room name, all being displayed in different spots. It doesn't have to be a grid. It can also be information that gets put into another element. So I have a RSS adapter that is creating a data table of just information's fed by the BBC News here, for example. You can use a data subscription and a data element. And if you actually drag that onto a ticker, that is how you can build something like a news or event or information ticker like this across the bottom of a screen. If I go to edit it, I just double clicked my ticker. You can see the two fields that are linked here are title and description. That was done just by dragging title and description onto the ticker space. And then I can stylize the text. I can decide, do I show the key? So does it say title before title? Does it show description before description? That's what show key would do. That's why it's turned off. I added some extra characters here to the separator between the different text items. And it is now just paging through the stories that are coming through that data feed tied to that ticker element. Some other elements that can be tied to data, the chart element can be directly tied to data as well that's coming in through a data feed. In terms of format masking, this is an example here where I've taken a New York Times RSS feed and I have multiple different data elements. I don't have just one table of the news. I have the different elements that have been formatted and masked in different ways. So this element here, when I double click on it and I examine its data, it is pulling in just the enclosure URL. That's the data piece that it's pulling in. And it is formatting that URL as an image, centering it with a 50-50 offset and setting it to cover so that it fills my space. Down here, I'm taking the data point that is the link or the URL and formatting as a QR code. So that's how you can take different information sources and just do different types of displays. It doesn't just have to be a data display of a grid of information, which we traditionally think about like displaying data. Want to pause for a moment, have a couple other concepts to talk through, but this really was the displaying data through layout subscriptions and then data element formatting. What questions can I answer for either of you today, Megan or Richard? Okay. So not seeing either of you jump off mute or anything get chatted in, you still can do that, please. What I want to talk about for the last couple minutes of just information I'm here to share are options that exist outside of this process. I will say that this process of building data integrations and feeding the raw data into Corbit gives us the most options of what to do with it. So this is how we can take something and turn it into a data ticker, turn it into a graph element that's acting a certain way. The data that's fed in through here can go all the way down to controlling a playlist so that you can have a playlist that displays one design if there are event details in the database. So like today's upcoming events. And then you have another design that displays when there are 0 events in that database. For that type of processing, we need a direct link to the data. Some systems, while they can provide a direct link to the data, what you really want to do is just display the information that you already have in a dashboard. We have a few ways to do that. I will say the strongest connection, the one that is also a lot of times the easiest to set up, is inside of our layout builder. We have some very specific elements here in our control panel that allow you to link to systems like Tableau, Tibco, and Power BI. So if you are just truly wanting to display a Power BI dashboard, you can add the Power BI element, and then you connect this element to your Power BI service. So this will likely require someone who's an administrator inside of your Power BI network to help you set this up. But then you are able to basically display those Power BI dashboards directly in a layout without having to build an integration to pull in the raw data and then rebuild the dashboard. So these are options for systems that have, I will say, generous API integrations, systems that let others connect to them kind of freely. Not every system is as robust as something like Microsoft Azure. We have recently launched a new product called Corbett Capture that can allow you to capture screenshots of other systems and just pull an image of that screenshot into Corbett. So it is a service. We have a knowledge base article and kind of an information article for it. My system does not have this service, and I don't have a system to connect to show you because I'm not an admin of systems like that. But what the system allows you to do is we create a script that uses your credentials to log into something like your ServiceNow platform. Capture a screenshot of a dashboard in ServiceNow. That gets returned to Corbett as an image file, and that image file is then sent onto a playlist to be played on your screens, giving a way to visualize your data even coming from systems that aren't necessarily compatible to give us the raw data or formalized enough that we have a data element to write code that's repeatable, like a Power BI type integration. I will let you know that the Corbett Capture feature is very new and does require some sales engineer support to set up. So it is one of those, if you are interested in it, you can let me know. You can let Logan know. You could also reach out to product@corbett.com to explore how we can set it up for you in your system. So those are the ways you can visualize data and actual dashboards where the dashboard already exists outside of Corbett versus rebuilding the data here in Corbett. Doesn't give us the type of control, though. I will say the upside is it just simply displays your dashboard in a format you already have. The downside is we're not getting the raw data, so we can't do things with it like control a playlist that decides if there is data to show or not. We're just getting a screenshot fed in or getting a dashboard fully formulated and fed in to Corbett. So that's what I had to cover with you today. What questions can I answer for you about data visualization, subscriptions within layouts, the data elements that I mentioned, like Power BI or Tableau, or the Corbett Capture feature, which we've recently launched? What questions can I answer for you today about any of those?
Hey Ed, Richard People here.
Hey, Richard.
I've been struggling with whether or not to use an adapter to pull RSS feeds or XML feeds versus the RSS widget and the XML widget. Do you have any data as to why one method works and the other method doesn't work?
Not in terms of works or doesn't. They should both work. I will say the downside of the RSS element, it's not really downside. Everything has an up and a down, right? So the RSS feed element, it is designed, its function is to really give you just a quick way to visualize an RSS feed. We're not pulling the table of like all of the RSS data into Corbett with this, we're grabbing the feed and visualizing it. Now, because of that, we get some different templates, and you can do some, let's say, rudimentary customizing of how that works for you. But you're not necessarily going to drag that RSS feed into a ticker if what you're trying to build is a ticker. Now, what this lacks in features, it makes up for in price. This is just simply included as a layout builder feature. The actual data integrations and data subscriptions are a feature that is a subscription feature. So if you have access to the data integration and creating an adapter that is coming from a template, if those are features that are available in your system, it means that, it was either purchased as an add-on or it's just part of your configuration of Corbett, and it gives you more power. But not necessarily everyone has turned on and purchased the ability to create data adapters. So that really is most clients' first decision point of, do I use the element or do I use a data adapter? It's, have I bought data adapters? And if not, you're using the elements, which
Okay.
work, they're just more limited.
We do have the adapters on our account, and I have utilized a couple of them already.
Mhm.
Um, uh, with Is it based on the account level if we have a limit on number of adapters we can make?
That is based on your subscription to how many
Subscription.
data adapters you've subscribed to,
Is there a
which is
level
another
that's unlimited?
reason it is not unlimited. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you are running up against it will tell you like you have run out of available adapters.
Okay.
If you go to create one and you have hit your limit on data adapters, because those adapters, every one of them adds processing demand to Corbett to go and like retrieve information. So we can't let them be unlimited. We have to keep tabs on them because they increase our processing to run them. So
Okay.
if you are up against your limit, you could speak to your sales team for your system. If you're not sure who those are, I can look it up on your account and let you know.
Okay. Some of the problems I ran into is I was trying to use an RSS widget, but it wouldn't pull the data, it wouldn't pull the feed from the address I was using, whether it's something about the code format in that feed, but then I'd put it in an adapter and the adapter would pull it.
Yeah, sometimes it just is. Sometimes it is the way it is coded by the RSS feed, and unfortunately, we don't have a control over that.
But you don't have any guidelines as to how to tailor your RSS feed so that it will be read by the widget?
No, because
Okay.
generally our clients aren't running their RSS feeds; they're pulling in someone else's RSS feed.
Oh, sure, sure. I'm working internally with a state university where we do have our own RSS feeds, and I'm struggling trying to get this stuff to display on our digital signs. And oftentimes I have to try it in an adapter. If it doesn't work, then I have to go to widget. If I try it in a widget, it doesn't work, I have to go to an adapter. And this is a case where I do have control over the feed.
That's good. Um, I would suggest reaching out to support to see if they have any
Support.
guidance. It's not something
Okay.
I've ever seen published, Richard, because we really are
Okay.
just ingesting the RSS feed and taking what it's given to us. So
Sure.
we're not really, on that building it side. Um, I will suggest if you're trying to actually show, if you would like really good control over formatting it, you're going to want to use the data adapter route. And I have seen that be more predictable in a lot of ways. The advantage of the data adapter route versus the element is that the element doesn't really give you a good breakdown of what it's getting fed. It really is just meant to be it's really inexpensive and it just pulls one item and pages through them because we're not adding a complex workload to the system that way. Versus something like the adapter where you can then see like how are we receiving the data through the adapter, like you get to see that whole table. of information coming in.
Okay. One thing I did run into the other day, and I do believe it was through the RSS widget, is some of my users were uploading WebP images into the XML feed, and the output inside of the system on the screen when deployed, it would, instead of not displaying the WebP format, because I know you don't support that, it dropped the entire story.
Gotcha. It might have been just generating an error as it
Okay.
tried to figure it out. That would be my guess, is that
Okay.
it
Yeah.
hit something incompatible and went, I'm not gonna risk messing everything up and just skip it. So
Yeah.
that would be my guess
I
again.
was trying to determine why your feed wasn't reading every story chronologically by date. And I couldn't figure it out until our webmaster figured out that it was linked to any story with a WebP image was not being displayed.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it was troublesome trying to discover where the problem was coming from, you know?
Yeah. Oh no, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a more detailed response for you, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got email connections with support, so they're
Yeah.
looking into stuff and has definitely helped me out a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. They might have some guidance. There might be something they can ask from for dev on what we're expecting to find through the element. I've not seen any, documentation, either internal or external, about it. So they might have some. It's a good question. Thank you for raising it. Um, Megan, don't want to ignore you. Did you have any questions that I can answer for you that we can review? It doesn't have to be super on topic either.
No, this has been super helpful though. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, I want to thank you both. If no other questions, thank you both for joining. Thank you for your interaction, your focus, your time. I look forward in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk through the brand controls, which are new in Corbett, which let you add colors and images that are easier to select inside of the signage system. Thank you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday.